if it wants to start recording. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third place match for After Hours Gaming League between Microsoft and Ernst Young. I can never say their name correctly. I have today with me the great and the always pleasurable Baron from IPL.
I think we need a little bit more of a build up, but you
Okay.
gave me great, and so I'm
The
I'll
great,
take it.
the
I'll take it. But
powerful.
like the Sultan of Swing, the Cl Cassius of Clout. I'm trying to remember the Sandlot thing for Babe Ruth, but
Oh, yeah, that was a good movie. That was a great movie.
it's okay though. I'll take great. I'll settle
The
for great.
almighty Baron, who has graced us with his presence after
It is
IPL
true.
2 weekends ago. He has taken the time out of his busy schedule to come cast the After Hours Game League with me, and I appreciate that, and it's always a pleasure casting with him.
We've warned the players actually that if they don't make this game entertaining, then I will be most displeased, and uh, my displeasure will be known.
Yeah, it looks like we actually might have an ARAM if it does go to the third game, which I'm kind of excited to see if that actually happens.
I'm messaging someone on the forums. I just saw a post that a guy was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get a win on every champion." So I wanted to wish him luck and I don't know, just give some insights real quick because I always think that's good. I mean, in my mind, it's tough to be, to obviously unlock all the champions, but if you can understand all the champions well enough to get a win with everyone, then it definitely helps a lot to your knowledge of the game, understanding lane matchups, but then I don't know, just being able to carry in a role that you're not really that comfortable with.
I would think playing Twitch or Evelyn would actually be pretty easy to get a win on, just because
It
people
is,
are like
yeah.
don't really remember how to play against stealth champions anymore.
That's why I always think it's funny. Evelyn is actually one of the easiest champs. I mean, it's a cheesy win. It's cheesy as all hell,
That's
but
the best kind of win, though.
there you go. But with since the jungle changes with a champ like Twitch or Evelyn, you can go either of them jungle, clear the jungle very easily and get levels. Because that was always the biggest thing with them was getting off to a good start, getting some early levels, getting some early farm. And that was just really difficult. But then you can just run around and because people don't care about, map awareness or anything, you just run around picking up kills because you're an invis champ and that's ridiculously overpowered. And
I
it makes
agree.
up for the fact that their base stats and everything about them is terrible. The fact that they're just invis and people don't pay attention.
Well, you also can't forget about their passive, their global taunt that they have. Whenever they pop out of
Oh,
stealth,
of
the
course.
entire enemy team actually goes for them, which is a big hindrance to playing those champions, but it's always a cool thing. I've actually seen people build Evelyn kind of tanky, like War Among Atlas Evelyn. So when she just pop out of stealth, it's kind of like it's kind of a hard engage almost, where you just stealth in, open up on someone, and you just take that beating while the rest of your team comes up and catches up to that person that you slowed.
Yeah, definitely. The big thing with Evelyn, which is why she had to be nerfed so aggressively. I mean, she's honestly the most annoying champ in the game. Actually, Yorick's up there too. Yorick is probably the most annoying champ in the game. But the big thing is if Evelyn or Twitch becomes strong enough where they can 1v1 anyone in the game, which isn't that hard. You just, you get an early advantage, you get some good early items, then, the items win you the matchup. If you get strong enough where you can 1v1 anyone, then the game's over because you can just run around picking people off. You go invis, wait for them to leave their team, and you just kill them real quick, and then you go invis again. And it's like, all right, then, well, that was an enjoyable game. I hope you had a lot of fun.
See, I have to disagree with you though on the most annoying champions because I would say Lux is the most annoying champion, not because of her skills and not because of her being AP, but because of her laugh spam.
I see. I don't even understand that concept. I was just in a game earlier with a guy doing a laugh spam, and that's so foreign to me. It doesn't even make sense. It does not compute.
Well,
But
come on, when you have that legendary Nunu skin, the Nunu bot, when he's running around going ha ha, that is
the
hilarious.
the Nunu bot skin's pretty good, but the grungy Nunu is just a superior skin. So I could never bring myself to playing any Nunu except for Sesame Street Nunu.
Cookie Monster. I'm so confused what's happening right now. They've been banning people, but then not banning, and what? Now they're picking with like four bans on the table that when one of them like doesn't count.
Well, I guess we can get serious now. Give a real
Oh wait,
introduction. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, get the excitement going. We have Microsoft versus Ernst& Young, third place match for the AHGL. I am the Red Baron from IPL. With me is but I love you. Actually, I guess I'm with him. So he is your host
We're
for the evening,
together.
and I'm just
Sweet.
guesting. But I'm definitely excited for this matchup. We do have a number of picks and bans going.
Yeah, we're actually together forever, always. We have like his BFF necklaces. But anyways, so yeah, we have Microsoft actually. They banned Shen. They banned Nautilus, which I know for a fact Nautilus is a targeted ban onto Koka. I'm just calling him
Okay.
Koka because he does a lot of Nautilus play in the jungle. And they also the third ban I'm assuming is in fact Rumble, even though they're saying it wasn't a ban. So I'm assuming that's their third ban, and we have Ernst with Jax, which is pretty much focused on nighttime, since he does play a lot of Jax. And if you remember Baron with his Philistone Jax and how you just always complained about it, and he proved you wrong with it actually like working out in the end.
I mean, he played well. I'm not gonna argue against it, but I don't know. It's interesting. It's kind of like running support Olaf items, except that that's definitely more of a viable build, I think. Um, I don't know, the early Shurelias is very strong. He didn't really turn it into an early
Yeah,
Shurelias
it
though,
stayed
so
Philo the entire game, if I
he
remember
kept it
correctly.
as a Philo. He just used it for early gold, and if that's the case, then you're losing that lane advantage that you have as Jax. But regardless, he definitely played very well. We saw last week Microsoft versus Amazon. It looked like they were going to come back. Game number one, we saw Amazon. Was it Amazon? Yeah, it
Yeah,
was Amazon. Amazon had been running Urgot top, and game number one, they just absolutely destroyed Microsoft. It was a lot of really interesting play that threw Microsoft for a loop because they had the double AD running. Game number two, we saw Microsoft come back. It looked like they had figured out the comp. I don't remember exactly what they had run, but they
oh, it was
definitely,
EA. Sorry, I'm
it
actually,
was EA.
yeah, it was
Oh,
EA.
okay. Uh, well, regardless, the EA had come back then. It looked like or Microsoft had come back. It looked like they had figured out what EA was doing. Game number three, EA was able to take it again with an early advantage. But even so, we've seen a lot of really impressive play from Microsoft. It'll definitely be, interesting to watch how they work. Nighttime, I don't know. He seemed kind of limited in his roles top, but the champs that he is very comfortable with, he's done exceedingly well with. So if he can find that comfortable role, then I don't know. Very quickly, we could see an advantage for them.
Very true. And actually, going back to bans real quick, finishing off, we see that Ernst actually banned Kennen as their final one. And I believe there actually are picks going down as well,
Yep.
where Ernst has picked up Udyr. Not sure. Actually, no, that will be a jungle Udyr since we do also have a Wukong and a Victor pick for them. And I don't want to ruin anything, and hopefully no one from Microsoft is listening. But I believe Ernst is actually running Victor bottom, is what I was told. So I guess
Really?
I guess we'll see what happens with that. And Microsoft actually has picked up Janna and Vayne. Janna, hands down, Janna is my favorite support. Just period. She has such an amazing kit, and she's so much fun to play. And just saving someone with that flash shield, and then your monsoon to knock them
Yeah.
away is always very satisfying.
Janna's kind of weird because she's just kind of OP from her skill set, and even if you're gonna base her nerf her stats, she just has such a great skill set. Her passive is so ridiculously strong. It's not as um, out there as when you used to see Soraka's with just burst heal. You were like, oh yeah, that's clearly OP because no one can die. Well, Janna's passive it kind of sits in the background. Maybe you don't think about it as much, but it really is just ridiculously overpowered. Having junglers with that extra movement speed for ganks, for counter jungling, your whole team with that movement speed is just incredible. Go along with that, her great utility kit, just kit all around, having all of those disables and whatnot. You're absolutely right. She is a definitely really aggressive champion. It's interesting to me, Plog picking up Wukong. Wukong definitely a pretty strong top lane. You usually want to pick him as a counter top lane, but they had seen Nighttime previously. We had seen him run Wukong when Jax was banned one to game, and he actually did very well. He struggled a lot in lane. He couldn't get the laning down. He really struggled with the matchups, but once he got out of the laning phase, he was just unstoppable in team fights. He provided them so much fight control, so that'll be interesting. But at the same time, we see that Wukong is going to be going against Yorick, so it'll be interesting to see whether how well Nighttime can play Yorick in that top lane. It might also be a support Yorick. That's always a potential, but Yorick should beat Wukong, very much. Like it's not even close how badly Yorick should beat Wukong in lane. It really comes down to whether or not Wukong can get an early advantage because Wukong is a lane killer, but Yorick's just such a powerful lane, particularly against a melee champ like Wukong with no sustain.
Yeah, I actually have a question for you about Wukong. It was brought to my attention by actually Pog yesterday, I believe, and he was showing me that on the tooltip it says Wukong's ult does 20 damage at level 1 per second over 4 seconds or 5 seconds. So it does, very minimal damage, but at level 2 it
Right.
does 110 damage per second. Do you have any, is that like just a tooltip error, or is that actually like the values, correct values?
I don't know the exact values, but I do know that it is very low at level 1. The values are so low that it's almost not worth it to keep it running. You want to use it to get the pop-up, and then you kind of want to turn it off. It depends. But then after level 2, I know that it gets really strong where you just leave it running. I do know that at level 1, in a lot of situations, it's better to just auto-attack than it is to keep it running, though.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's mostly just used for the utility at level 1, I'm assuming, and then level 2 and 3 you actually start doing more damage and should keep it going. Not to
Those
mention,
values, yeah, I think you're right. Those values don't sound exactly right because that just sounds like ridiculous scaling. But um, yeah, I think it's definitely the case.
yeah, it's actually what it says on the tooltip online, so that's why I was really thrown off. Like maybe it wasn't updated. Like for instance, on the Reddit forums, someone's talking about Blitzcrank and Wit's End, and then the Blitzcrank information says Wit's End's a really good item for reducing his passive,
Hmm.
which is I guess, I'm assuming referring to the old Wit's End, where you actually used to take mana away instead of doing static damage. So I don't know, but that was actually really interesting to see, as Pog brought up, and we also see that Ernst Young has actually picked up Olaf Soraka, so we're gonna see
I
some.
I'm very confused. Yeah, by Ernst Young's team. I mean, we'll talk about it, I guess. If you want to continue, I didn't mean to cut you off
I
there.
know that's fine.
But like you said, Victor may be going bottom. And there's a couple of issues with that. One, Victor obviously is an AP champ. He can do very well bottom. And Victor and Soraka would be an incredibly aggressive lane. It would be very difficult to deal with, particularly when Janna doesn't have a heal. They can just burst down Vayne, really be abusive in that lane. But the concern is Victor needs levels. AD carries, they usually go bottom because you don't need levels as much, so you can split the experience, but you need the gold. AP carries, you go mid because you need the levels. You need to be those levels to be as effective. So they're going to lose some of that efficiency. But then at the same time, we're running an almost, all melee team. We've got Udyr, Wukong, and Olaf. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I'm curious whether or not Olaf is going top. I think Olaf's going top and Wukong mid. So, I don't know, definitely a lot of interesting dynamics to this game. It'll definitely... I'm kind of curious to see what Ernst& Young has in mind.
I'd be really scared if I was on Microsoft just to see a new Deer, Wukong, and Olaf running at me. That's such a strong and tanky front line. It's pretty ridiculous. Not to mention Wukong's ultimate to knock everyone up to protect Plog. But yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, that is the downside to having an AP bottom, where you really need those levels to actually do a lot more damage. It's not really based off gear. Well, it is obviously based off gear, but you
Mhm.
definitely need those levels. And I'm really curious to see, like, what happens. So I know a lot of teams have been experimenting with an AP bottom with Soraka, like Cassiopeia Soraka, or not to mention Cassiopeia Tarek, I believe. So I'm really curious to see what happens, and as well that nighttime top lane as York, because we haven't seen him play that yet. And I'm really curious to see how well he does.
No, we haven't, but Yorick's definitely a strong pick. Matches up very well against both Wukong and Olaf, though Olaf is, one of those really just ridiculously strong top lanes. But it will be a good matchup for Wukong, or for Yorick. I think it's actually kind of interesting. The team that Ernst& Young is running, it's kind of reminiscent for me of the old Disciples of the Great Whale Lord. And I don't know if you remember them, but it was almost 2 years ago, and Jat was on the team at one time. Guardsman Bob was on it, and they ran all melee comps, and they played exceedingly well. They were very tight with their control and whatnot, so they won a lot of games, but they never could quite beat the top teams. And here's the issue. Uh, these melee bruiser kind of champions, they're very easy for team fights. You can get a lot of good fight control. You get, really strong really quickly. Pair it with Soraka, who's going to have those heals. It'll be very difficult for Microsoft to just, outright kill these champions. But there's a number of weaknesses. First and foremost, they're going to send melees in lanes that aren't really beneficial to them. They've got Gragas going to be matched up against a melee, and I might want to send Olaf mid because Olaf has the sustain, whereas Gragas could just wear down Wukong. So that'll be a concern. Wukong has a lot of burst potential, so maybe we see a kill mid. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them to get kills, tough for them to get into the game. And then here's the bigger issue: when you run a full melee team like this, you have almost no tower pushing potential. So in order to win the game, they need to just get so far ahead that they're just unstoppable. They can tank turrets or just, go around killing Microsoft constantly. Because if they can't, then they have no means of killing the towers. Gragas is just going to constantly push out the waves and stall out the game, while all these melee champs, they can't get into tower range because they're just going to get picked off and die. So that's definitely a concern for them. They don't have, great sustain damage. If Lee Sin and Yorick get too tanky, couple that with the Janna, it'll be extremely difficult for them to take them down. Though Olaf, he is one of those hyper carry kind of champions. Even as a melee, he does scale exceedingly well. He will become extremely tanky. And then with his, his E, I'm trying to remember the name, his Reckless Swing, I think, he will have that true damage so that maybe he can take down some of these tanks. Like Lee Sin, he doesn't usually, you get a lot of health on Lee Sin, so it's kind of tough to say. Like health counters true damage. So if he gets too much health, then the true damage won't be as effective. I don't know. It'll be an interesting matchup to say the least.
Well, I'm trying to go over how a team fight would actually go down for Ernst Young. I can imagine we'd see, sorry, Wukong actually jumping in and knocking up as many people as possible, and that gives Olaf the time he needs to go straight through them with his ultimate pop, so he can't be knocked out by Janna, to go straight for Vayne every time, and just kind of just blow her up is kind of like what I'm assuming they're going to do. And you were talking about, how all melee teams, they have no tower pushing potential, and I was going to say, it really feels like all melee teams kind of seem to fall off late game, especially, bruisers fall off once the AD carries
Right.
kind of get the items they need. So if they can't win this game by like a certain point or certain time, I feel like, it's pretty much going to go downhill from there.
Yeah, that's definitely true. They need to take advantage of the game early. It'll be interesting. I think a lot of it's going to come down to how effective Victor is going to be. And not giving Victor the levels you want, it means that his mid game is going to be hurt a little bit. Microsoft is definitely going to want to be very cognizant of, how strong Victor is as a champion. I think a lot of people don't recognize some of his strengths because he has some major weaknesses, mobility being one of them, usability being another. But he's got a lot of damage output, and the silence on his ultimate could be devastating for their team. So if you look at it, we have Wukong for the initiation. That's really strong initiation. He's got a great, potential there. So if Wukong initiates, follow it up with the silence from Victor with that ultimate, with the E. That's going to be a lot of damage extremely quickly. It'll give Victor time to place his trap underneath Wukong. All of a sudden, they have all this burst damage. And then where melee teams thrive is when you have disorganized fights, is when, you're all kind of split up. You're fighting them 1v1. We don't have those that great AoE sustain that you like to see against bruisers. We have AoE burst with Gragas, and that'll be nice for disrupting the fight a lot. Maybe they can pick people off if Ernst Young doesn't get tanky enough quickly. Gragas just, hey, everyone stand in front of me. Boom, I just chunked you all to half health. I've picked off one of your champions. Now all of a sudden, Microsoft is in a huge position, but they don't have that sustained damage like Karthus, like Cassiopeia, who can just sit there and do extremely well against those teams. So a lot of it's going to come down to Gragas, how effective he can be, and then how much Vayne can farm. It's really going to be down to Vayne's farm. But then when you consider Vayne plus the Yorick ult, they're going to have all this AD damage later in the game. That's going to be exceedingly difficult for Ernst & Young to deal with. I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch, though. They have a lot of burst, and once the fights are disorganized, they can definitely win those smaller engages just with their natural tankiness, their natural damage. All these champions have very high base damage, so all they need to do is build HP items, build tanky items, and if they get too tanky for Microsoft, then that could be the key for them winning.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that's kind of not in favor of Ernst Young is the fact that Olaf's the only one that will not be affected by Microsoft's ultimates. Or if he overextends too far, you could have a Gragas barrel knock him out. You can have a Janna ultimate Monsoon knock him out. So he'll be all alone, way overextended, and he could be dropped extremely quickly. So I'm really curious to see like how well Ernst Young can actually time all of their abilities. And talking about Victor a little bit is that we don't see much play out of bursty AP champions minus Viger because it's all about sustained magic damage now. Everyone's kind of
Right.
playing, Cassiopeia has a high amount of sustained magic damage. That's why you see it as well. Morgana, who
Rise.
can, yeah, Rise especially. who could just keep going to town and be extremely tanky. So it's kind of unusual to see a bursty AP champion, but I'm kind of curious to see how much damage he can actually put out. If he has a really good early game, I can see it being extremely deadly for Microsoft. Just once that, you were just saying Wukong knockup followed up by Victor's ultimate with the silence, it's going to be extremely, extremely cool to see a team fight.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I mean, there's a reason that we don't see AP carries go bottom often, but it is an extremely scary lane for Microsoft. The big concern, like we said, is that Victor needs to get his levels. So if Vayne can farm effectively, then that advantage goes to Microsoft. But this is going to be a very tough lane. The mana that Soraka is going to be providing Victor is just going to be devastating. He's got his Q, so he can exchange very well with Vayne, and if he starts hitting her with Q followed up by an E, then very quickly he's going to take control of that lane, maybe push her back. But we do see Lee Sin coming up top for a little bit, see if he can get in a gank.
Yeah, it's a typical Lee Sin kind of gank. Grab your red, come top, and we see Nighttime being a little aggressive here, who is approaching, he's about halfway level 2, and that slow would be really nice. But now we see Lee Sin coming in here, getting in front of Olaf, and Olaf's just trying to run away, maybe dodge something, and there doesn't look like they're actually going to get a kill here. But looks like Lee Sin takes some heavy tower damage and potentially about to die, but looks like Coco actually got away without actually going any summoners there, so that was actually really, really good for him. And he is running cloth armor 5 pots, so all that damage that was just done to him will be healed up and in momentarily.
Yeah, it's actually really scary. Olaf almost could have turned that around on them. A lot of that goes back to Yorick. He went for the teleport, give them that early map control, but without having that ignite, you lose a lot of that killing potential. You lose a lot of that lane control that you want. So I don't know, it'll be interesting. Olaf should be able to heal back. He went cloth armor, he went all those health pots, so he should be able to come back, take a little bit more control in that lane. So it'll be, the impetus is really on Nighttime to play a very effective Yorick game and shut down Olaf's farm early on.
Yeah, and one thing I actually want to talk about is going back to Victor and how you're saying, if he can just, get a little, his Q damage, get his power transfer followed by his death ray, can do, quite a bit of damage to an AD carry. And the one thing I'm really curious about, and I want to see your opinion on it, is when do you augment on Victor? Do you need to go for that early sustain a little bit, maybe get a little bit more health, maybe get some more damage, or go straight for that augment death?
Honestly, I haven't played enough Victor to make that kind of decision. I definitely think that I would rather have a Doran's. The item upgrade on
Sorry,
Victor
in the meantime, we see
strong.
a gank here by Udyr actually going for Gragas. It looks like Gragas might be able to get away from this Ignite,
Oh,
but just that last take does pick him off. So first blood does go to Ernst Young there, and that really gives a huge advantage to Wukong in the middle now. I mean, he's going to have that first blood. He's going to have a little bit of a level advantage, and I mean, well, Gragas obviously will get better over time just based on his barrels. If he gets a little bit of AP, he can full clear the caster wave in one barrel hit. So he doesn't have to really get too close, but that still really, sets him far behind.
Yeah, I think Gragas was just getting a little careless there. He got a little bit excited because Gragas is definitely one of the safest farming champions in the game. He should be able to farm very well against Wukong, should be able to shut him down. We do see Udyr coming up top, so we'll see if he gets in on Yorick, but Gragas will be very safe in that lane, but Wukong has a lot of kill potential. So I think Gragas, because he was going against that melee, was getting some good harass. He thought he was okay, but we do see Udyr coming in top. He's going to get that stun, and there's the flash. So the flash is down, gets some nice damage, but Nighttime will be perfectly fine. The wave is pushing into him, so he can start zoning Coco a little bit, farm very effectively under tower.
Yeah, one thing I really want to point out, I like this really early game, as we see Lee Sin actually coming in for a gank on middle. If you look at Wukong, he's actually leveling up his Nimbus Strike first. And I'm assuming that's just because he's not against a bruiser and he doesn't really need to max his Q, which really takes away a lot of armor and does a lot of damage. But that still is really interesting to see. He kind of just wants to get in for some damage and get out kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it reduces the cooldown, so it gives him a little bit more harassing. You're right, if he was going against someone who was playing more of a melee role, actually Lee Sin, that almost could have been a ganking opportunity for him to wait for Wukong to use his Nimbus Strike. But it does give him some good damage. We actually see Vayne going on to Yorick there, so getting some nice damage. He will have the Soraka, so he can sustain there. But I'm
so confused. Yeah. The Vayne going on Yorick.
I'm jumping all around. I'm sorry, Vayne going on to what's it? Victor? Gosh, yeah, you never see Victor. Wow, actually Wukong going to get a kill onto Gragas, actually flashing after him, but is going to die under tower.
And in the meantime, we saw Udyr was actually sitting in that bush and
bot lane, we actually see a fight again.
Why do they have to break up fights all over the map at the same time? What? Come on, these guys aren't being respectful. But yeah, Udyr was actually camping that top bush, and Vayne's still going in for some damage here, and actually gets ignited and pops her heal and shielded as she runs away. And Soraka flashed in for that banana hit, but Shifkey will get away right there. But yeah, like I was saying, Udyr was actually camping this bush right here, and he
Yeah.
camped it for quite a long time actually, and got nighttime to actually overextend just a little bit, just enough for him to come in and get that stun with that red buff, and get him killed. Not to mention, with Olaf's vicious, with his undertow and with his reckless swing, does an insane amount of damage, and it looks like Olaf is just going to be able to handle Yorick top lane now. I mean, he's building towards his Wriggles, which is really good, obviously. And the one thing about that is, if you get hit by a ghoul, like if Nighttime does put a ghoul on you, you hit it once, you get all the health back that was just done to you. So you can't really be harassed anymore in lane.
Yeah, I mean, once you have the Wriggles, any top lane, you can sustain, very well through any harass. So that will be key. Microsoft really, they're falling a little bit behind right now, but they need to just recognize that if they can, I don't know, make it through this early portion of the game, if they can get Vayne to a point where Vayne needs to be, they have a lot of great fight control. And particularly with Gragas, if Gragas can pick up some kills, they can't allow these bruisers to get off to a good start. Because if you get this bruiser team, if you get them some kills early, then very quickly they'll just pull ahead. They'll snowball very well. Wukong is a kind of snowball champion. He's 2-1 right now, but he's going to have a lot of burst damage. Gragas still should be fine against him, still should have that advantage. But even so, it will be a tough lane. We see Lucian actually coming up top, trying to get a gank in on Olaf, but not going to happen. So Microsoft kind of looking for what they want to do right now. For the most part, they need to just farm, wait for opportunities to come to them.
One thing I will say that Microsoft does have in their favor, at least in my opinion, is they have Vayne. They have that hyper carry with that true damage. Right. So bruisers, really aren't too complicated for that kind of AD carry. I mean, if you have like an Ashe or Tristana, where you really need that last whisper and IE to do quite a bit of damage, you have Vayne, who just can, as long as you get attack speed, you'll just destroy any target. Kog'Maw obviously be another nice pick as well, but
right.
With Vayne, at least you have some more power to get away, from an Olaf, which I think will be really key here.
Yeah, and here's the issue. Actually, we see Victor going on to Vayne, using his ultimate, going to get some good damage there, not going to get the kill. But here's the issue. Vayne is a very short-range hyper carry, so I don't know. Oh, excuse me. You compare, she does have a lot of survivability. She does have the dive. She does have condemn. But when you're going against this full melee team, she's going to be right in that kill range for Wukong. And if Wukong gets onto Vayne, then very quickly that's a one fight for Ernst and Young. They can't allow Vayne to go down early in these fights. So, she's going to have to sit back, be very safe, wait for Janna. Janna's definitely going to need to get some good ults. We'll see whether or not Ernst and Young maybe going to go for a tower dive here. Microsoft does see him up top lane.
And in bot lane, we see Lee Sin actually come in for a kill here, and Basubi actually trying to bait him in as Lee Sin comes in, trying to go for the Soraka here. It looks like she will be going down. She gets condemned into that wall, and Vayne actually leveling tumbles, so that condemn did quite a bit of damage either way.
Yeah.
Soraka is obviously extremely squishy, so she's really vulnerable to kills. But yeah, I mean, we just saw as Udyr and Wukong headed top, Microsoft was aware of that and actually kind of called Yorick back and protected him. So at least they're being really aware. And actually, kind of, I would say they're winning bot lane now easily, just because Victor cannot keep up with Vayne's damage as she gets stronger, or gets more levels, I guess I should say.
And that's the key. Vayne, definitely has the strong sustained harass damage. Victor wins in the burst, but we do see a gank top lane where they're going to just tower dive for it. There's the flash in from Rekt. He's going to get the stun. Chasing after Nighttime. Nighttime still getting some good damage there. Rekt going to get another stun. Should be able to pick up the kill here. There's that Phoenix stance, so there it is. He will go down. But Lee Sin actually coming in, so there's the Dragon Kick on direct. They are still chasing him down. We will have the slow from Nighttime. The missed Q from Arnath, so not going to be able to get it. Wukong is coming up for his team, though. They don't want to chase too much, but Gragas is going to be here as well. We'll see whether or not this turns around on
him. Come on, Gragas. Gets a really nice barrel on to knock him out, gets the ignite, and gets stunned so he cannot pop his barrel, but it looks like Udyr is going to be able to get away with his shield. And in the meantime, Wukong coming in with that knockup, and as we were just saying, his knockup is so weak at level 1. He maybe should have canceled it there to make it do a little more damage, but he did pick up that kill on Gragas, and actually he just DC'd, so maybe he would have survived there, and maybe he kind of, unfortunately, just got disconnected right in the middle of that fight and wasn't able to move, because I didn't actually see him E away from that fight.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's kind of interesting. I'm curious about the exact numbers. Like you said, looking at the tooltip, it's pretty good. It's because it has a really high base. It scales so well. It's actually plus 139 from his physical damage, so it's definitely stronger than his attack. Looking at the tooltip now, but then there's also the fact that Wukong, he's not really affected by Gragas' attack slow. So Gragas, his Q it is really effective against physical bruisers, which is a concern for their team because it reduces your attack slow. That's going to reduce their damage output a lot. But Wukong, with that ultimate, won't be affected by that as much. Olaf, because he's, more of a spell physical carry, he needs his W a lot. So, the slow will hurt him there. But his Qs and Es obviously won't be affected by it. So it'll be interesting to see how much that slow from Gragas will affect, their sustained damage later in the game.
I'm really curious what do you think about York going tier? I mean, typically when I play him, I always go tier, but what about kind of that Doran's Blade build that, we see a lot of top lanes running? Or do you think, a tier is really key? I mean, he can't really harass anymore, is the problem.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've seen a lot of Yorks go Chalice just so you have that sustained damage. Dorans are definitely, very strong top lane. It allows you to sustain in fights. It allows you to win those engagements. We do see Olaf chasing him after him a little bit, not going to pick him up with the next axe, but Rekt again, sitting here bot, not really getting the ganking opportunity he wants. Janna's just so survivable in lane. He's really just wasting his time. But the tier, it gives him that large mana pool which he needs, and so he can build it into mana immune. Arnath coming up top, though, we'll see whether or not he gets a gank on Olaf here.
And it looks like he does not actually, or Coca does not actually have sight of this Lee Sin being there, so he's a little overextended. And in the meantime, at the bottom, we see Rekt going in, and we see a Victor ult as well, but just unfortunately not get anything in. And also in the meantime, top lane, we see Lee Sin getting a really nice ultimate onto Olaf to knock him back towards his tower, or the enemy's tower, to kind of hold him there. And it looks like they are going to finish up that kill. But that was actually a perfectly timed kick. Olaf was not able to get his ultimate off to really stop being knocked around from that, and just got knocked out of position there. And now we see Theo coming back to the game, and hopefully that won't hurt him too much, because that'd be really disappointing to get a loss because of that.
Yeah, but the big thing, again, you saw bottom lane. They're just so survivable in this lane now. It's really tough to gank a Janna lane, particularly when you have someone like Vayne who can get out of that engage very easily. And I think it's interesting that, Victor can't muster up enough damage to take down Vayne. I was kind of thinking that might be his strength in lane, but Vayne's been perfectly fine, farming exceedingly well. So is Victor, so that'll be interesting. They will have a lot of, damage coming into these mid-game team fights.
I'm kind of curious if Taric would have been a better support choice. I mean, you do lose that mana, but you get that stun, which really helps for ganks. And then you pair that in with the Victor's burst. I mean, it's really powerful. Not to mention you can gravity field on top of the stun target to keep them there even longer. But I mean, obviously Soraka with that mana, with the infuse, is just really, really nice to have bottom lane. But I don't know, you kind of have a trade-off. I mean, you don't really need to go Doran's Rings if you're running bot lane with Soraka. If you're running with the Taric, obviously you do, but you kind of lose out on AP because of that. I mean, you get the extra survivability, but I mean, when you're going for like a kill lane, which it feels like this kind of is, but unfortunately not working well, you kind of need that extra AP. And we do see he did augment depth already. He augmented about 5 minutes ago, so he did go for that early augment match with the Doran's Ring. So he is trying to harass as much as possible, but yeah, just that that shield alone is really mitigating most of the damage off of that.
And here you see, again, Vayne's sustained damage against Victor. I think the big concern is that just might be, a weakness of Victor running in this bottom lane. He needs too much mana, so they, had to go Soraka for that infuse. The heal burst potential works very well with their bruiser team. It will, allow them to be very tanky. We do see Wukong and Udyr trying to get in on this bottom lane, but Lee Sin kind of sitting around, so expecting a counter gank will come into this bush here, see if he can get an engage. But regardless, I mean, they don't really have the kill potential that you would want, but they're not getting the good sustained damage, which should be a strength of their lane. I think a lot of it is maybe that Vayne can just avoid his Victor's ease so easily. She just tumbles right out of the way. He's not getting that harass that he needs, and she just wins those sustained fights, like we're seeing right here, just chasing him down, chasing him out of lane. I don't know, really effective play.
Yeah, in the meantime, sorry, we see Lee Sin come up here into River, actually getting chased down by Olaf and Wukong, but it's a nice juke and gets away right there. But one thing I wanted to point out bot lane is actually wow, Olaf doing a lot of damage to Lee Sin as Wukong comes in and knocks him up as well. And they actually do pick up that kill. I was really surprised to see Lee Sin get caught there. I was really expecting him to kind of get away and just kind of walk away from that fight. But that was unfortunately a little missed up there. And now they're going to be able to pick up Dragon as well. But one thing I really was trying to say is that look at Victor's CS compared to Vayne. He's actually keeping up and beating her, which is really surprising as an AP carry bottom lane because you lose out on CS, but you're supposed to, kind of make up for that by getting some kills, and he's actually beating her, which is very surprising to me.
Yeah, he's doing very well. We do see Udyr coming in here. There's the Janna Whirlwind, so they should be fine, able to get out of there once again. Nighttime, going to be able to push down that top tower, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I think, Microsoft a little bit is a little bit surprised by their burst damage. You saw Lee Sin there. He was kind of casually getting out. They had gotten out of there. There's the ultimate from Gragas, actually not going to hit it. If he had hit him under tower, then he might have been able to pick up the kill there. But I think, I don't know, he's just surprised by how much base damage this Bruiser team has. And that's the strength of Bruisers. You really need to respect it a lot.
Respect the Bruisers.
Yeah.
See, one thing that always really annoyed me about Victor is how you can't change your augment. Like, I would love to augment your gravity field just so you have that extra range and that cooldown reduction, which is really key in lane, being able to spam as much as possible. But you can't, switch out of that to something, more viable late game like augment depth. I mean, that's one change I think to him that would make him really more or seen a lot more in competitive play. It's such a, you lose that utility of not being able to get your gravity field because you have to get really close to land it without it being augmented, which is the major downside. You're not that tanky of an AP carry.
Yeah, and I think that it's just too weak of an ability all around. We do see Lee Sin coming up top. I don't know, his W, because his damage abilities are just so strong. We actually see him flashing on top of Vayne and Janna. That seems like a mistake there. He does have the Ignite going off into Janna. Will be able to pick up the kill, but Vayne going to be able to get this flashing out of the W there from Victor, so able to pick up the kill. But, again, Victor's damage abilities are so strong.
And so in the meantime, on top we see York actually getting tower dove by Wukong here, who does get landed on by a Sonic Wave from Lee Sin, and he does get that flash knockup on every member up there, even the Ghost, and it looks like Lee Sin is going to go down to Olaf here, and Olaf is just going to back out, so nice one-for-one trade there, and that was actually a really good turnaround, because Wukong got extremely low by that Lee Sin Sonic Wave, and now Theo coming in from middle lane, trying to catch back up, but unfortunately he's unable to get anything, and he's just behind now. I mean, that DC was a lot. He at least is keeping up in levels somewhat, but it's 100 CS compared to actually they're 100. Never mind. That's actually that's an even lane right now. Except Wukong does obviously have 4 kills and an assist.
Well, and Gragas should be crushing Wukong in CS right now. He can farm the race, which Wukong can't. He just has so much lane control. Is so easy to farm. You saw him missing the barrel there, so he really needs to hit those as the game progresses. It'll be interesting to see, how effective he can be. But going back to Victor, yeah, it would be a nice change to be able to rebuy those items. I don't know, it's just such a strong option being able to swap back and forth. Like, it'd be nice to start off with the damage on your E, and then later on transition to the Q. When you hit the Q, it gives you movement speed. So that's, movement speed is clearly going to be very strong later in the game when you want to kite around the fights a little bit. I don't know, that would be definitely interesting to see.
It just seems like, because you have such a perfect setup. It's pretty much you have a Malphite on your team. You have the knockup on however many people you want, and if you lay down your trap, your gravity field right after that, they're stuck. It's gonna be another pretty much 2-second stun after that, and that really sets a team off. Like, you're not really prepared for something like that. You kind of run it. You kind of get not distracted. You get confused. You get scared, and sorry. In the meantime, we see Vayne actually going to be killing Plog here at bottom. But you kind of get really thrown off, and you don't know what to do. So it's really strong for a team to do something like that. Sorry, that was actually a pretty sweet flash right there with the condemn as well.
Yeah, but Vayne definitely able to pick up the kills. That's one of the benefits of leveling up the Q is the cooldown is so huge. You see a lot of Vayne's kind of mixing and matching, not sure where to go. Gragas not going to be able to get the ult onto Olaf there, but even so, Vayne loses a little bit of the damage from leveling her W or from leveling her condemn. But the cooldown reduction on her Q is just so strong for survivability and for sustained damage in fights.
And not to mention, she's not really going against a tanky target in lane. I mean, I typically level Silver Bolts when I'm going against like a Graves or someone that has a Taric support just to help out. Because if you're running attack damage runes instead of armor pen, you need that extra damage somewhere. But because she's against a Victor who doesn't have, let's check out his armor chance. He's 56 armor, so he's not doing too bad. But that tumble, just that harass, tumble in, hit him, back out. Tumble away from his his death ray, maybe hit him, back out kind of thing. It just does so much damage, and you're right, that cooldown reduction is just amazing for an ability like that, especially in lane.
Yeah, and it's interesting how well the Silver Bolts from Vayne does against the Soraka, because obviously one of the strengths of Soraka is getting that armor from the heal, so Vayne can kind of counter that out some with some of that true damage. But Microsoft doing a pretty good job of pushing early, and if they can get some early towers, get some map control, bottom very close to going down, then they can obviously stall out the game. It will be tough for Ernst & Young to go, but here's Lee Sin coming mid. We do see there he's going to have vision of Wukong, going to be able to jump into him. There is the Wukong ultimate trying to get out of there. The exhaust, and there's the barrel coming up from Theostru. Rekt is coming in as well. They are going to reset, just back off there. But again, if Ernst & Young can't get the fights that they want, can't get the early advantage that they want, then it will be tough for them to push. It will move more and more into that Vayne late game. But at the same time, if they get tanky enough, if they farm well enough, there might be a point in time where they just become too tanky for Microsoft to deal with. I mean, other than Vayne, we don't have any real good sustained damage from Microsoft. Yorick is terrible for sustained damage. Actually, sorry, Lee Sin is good. But there's Lee Sin and Vayne, just two champions. So if they get physical, if they get a lot of armor as the game progresses to go with how tanky they're getting, not having some good sustained magic damage will hurt their team.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely agree. Like Grog is all about that burst. I mean, your goal is to burst someone down. Usually the AD carry, which Ernst doesn't have an AD carry, which is kind of funny. But they do have a Yorick. Actually, sorry. In the meantime, we see a little bit of engagement here. John is trying to reset the fight as Wukong comes in, and he does not have his ultimate up, so he won't really be too effective in this fight. As Vayne is picking off the Soraka in the back, and Rek does manage to pick up Nighttime, who did at least ult Vayne before he died, and now Ernst is actually just pushing into him, doing so much damage, and
but at the same time, Vayne is so strong right now. She is being kept alive. Olaf is here, though. They will have to watch out for that. But there it is, the body slam onto Udyr. They are going to take him down. Olaf going to go down as well.
Wow.
So keeping Vayne alive through those long fights, no one was on Vayne the entire time. So, the rest of the team could kite around, has lots of mobility with Janna. They're able to, keep alive. Yorick going down, hey, big deal. Yorick goes down. But I don't know, having that Vayne in those long fights is huge for Microsoft.
I have to say, I think that fight would have been completely different if Wukong had his ultimate up. I really feel like they would have knocked down 2 or 3 members easily of Microsoft, and it would have completely turned the fight around. And unfortunately, that was just a really not timed well engaged. I mean, you kind of need his ultimate up. If you don't have Wukong's ult, you're kind of lacking that extra CC that you need, that extra disruption. And that was actually really unfortunate for them. So close.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if Ernst & Young can burst down Vayne in these later fights, which is really the key. They want to have just the Wukong with the perfect initiation on Vayne, follow it up with Victor with all of his burst damage. If they can burst down Vayne, then very quickly, those fights shift to Ernst & Young's favor. Excuse me, without that sustained damage on Vayne, I keep on, getting this gas. I had a perfect peanut butter and jelly earlier. It was delicious. That'll be the last I ever talk about that at all.
Peanut butter and jellies or gas?
Gas.
Okay, let's say don't take peanut butter and jellies out of the situation. I mean, you can keep.
But yeah. So if they can keep Vayne alive, Microsoft wins. If not, Ernst & Young. It'll be interesting to see whether or not we see a GA later, but we do see a fight. Body slam onto Udyr. There's the Wukong ultimate. Janna is going to go down very quickly, and Gragas should be following. Lee Sin can't get out of there. They are chasing him down. There's the power shift from Victor, able to pick him up, and now Yorick in the middle of the team, not
doing nothing.
To get out of there. Yeah, he's just kind of sitting around, going to go down as well. This might actually be a really strong Baron opportunity for Ernst & Young, but they will have to be wary of Gragas' burst potential. He's great against Baron. You can, steal Baron so easily as Gragas with the combo. It's like 1,500 damage. At this point in time, on how much? Yeah, it's going to be close to 1,500. Vayne actually getting some nice damage there, being pretty safe against this Ernst & Young team.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the disconnect from Gragas earlier, which really hurt him, but that double kill he got at that Dragon fight, and the Ace really put him back in the game. He has his death cap now, he has his sword boots, he even has another blasting one, which I'm assuming is going to be going towards a Void Staff, but he's definitely in the fight, or definitely back in the fight, which is really good to see, because it was a really unfortunate disconnect. And yeah, just the longer the game goes on, his damage potential is going to be even higher, because I don't really expect Ernst to build too much magic resist. I mean, we do have a Wit's End on Udyr, but like you're saying, most of the damage is coming from attack damage. It's coming from that Vayne. It's coming from that Lee Sin, and the Yorick does a little bit. I have to give him something. But he does, obviously have his ultimate for Vayne. But yeah, they're going to be building a lot more armor, so he will be able to burst down potentially this Victor and Soraka. I mean, if he could take Victor out of the fight, that is huge.
Yeah, I think Gragas' potential against this team is really coming into the mid-game because Gragas has so much burst potential, like we've been saying. You're right, they won't be building magic resist, but what they will be building is lots and lots of HP. And HP counters burst casters so effectively. If they get enough HP where they can just shrug off Gragas' damage, then very quickly, they don't have the sustained magic damage. That'll hurt them some. And then they can just build armor and then, focus down Vayne. That'll be very strong for them. It'll be interesting to see, though. Gragas is definitely going to have a massive amount of AoE damage, but Microsoft doing a pretty good job of pushing so far. We do see Arnath taking that mid tower. And so with that pushing, with that map control, they can move the game more and more into their favor, not allow these bruisers to take hold.
You know, going back to what you were just saying about health, it really feels like a double-edged sword for them because they build more health, but Vayne's going to do more damage to you off silver bolts. So it's like it's kind of like pretty much just a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to build armor with that to kind of counter that. But it's really one of those things I hate. It's like, hey, let me build more health so I don't get burst down to fight. Oh wait, now I have Kog'Maw or Vayne just chunking me even harder because of that.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're going to get a Frozen Heart later. They, are already working on a Randuin's. There it is, the Randuin's on Udyr. So Randuin's, if they get a Frozen Heart as well,
I'm sorry, I have to say something. Randuins, it sounds like Stewie from Family Guy. I say it as Randuins, and you're like, Randuins.
what?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool Whip?
Sorry, it gets in you. So Frozen Heart eventually
Yeah, well,
comes later.
that attack speed slow is just going to be devastating to Vayne. So even though she will get some more damage from her W, I don't know, it does counter off the base damage. So we'll see Vayne kind of out of position here. She's going to have to get out of there. They don't really know where she is, but I don't know. We'll see. She's actually maybe going to try and get in on Udyr. Could stun him against a wall for Gragas to pick up the kill there.
She's just kind of get like a sneaky run right there. It does ult
Yeah.
away, but now she's all by herself as Lee Sin does come in to help out. And she can get bursted here right now if she... Wow, that Condemn and Lee Sin Sonic Wave just destroyed that Victor. And that's exactly what Ernst has to do to easily win these teamfights. Actually, sorry, Microsoft to actually win these teamfights is actually pick off their huge burst AP carry. And now we see Microsoft actually on the offensive here pushing into him as Wukong turns around, takes out that Vayne. And that Vayne actually overextended a little too far, but is ghosted by that Yorick, so she is still fighting. And in the meantime, now we see Olaf trying to run away as Yorick trying to keep Olaf slowed for Vayne to catch up to him. But unfortunately, Vayne does die off that ghost. And now Janna and Yorick are against a Udyr and Olaf. And I have to say, it looks like, wow, sorry, Olaf actually getting caught by that Yorick. I'm kind of surprised to see him go back in that fight. He really want to get that Janna down, but he kind of cannot survive against this Yorick who's just tanking this Udyr. And unfortunately, that knockup missed, but actually looks like they're going to pick up this kill here and also pick up that Oracle, which is really huge for them.
Yeah, it's going to be close. Udyr, definitely has that great sustainability, can get out of there.
He's getting away.
Yeah, actually, he is going to be able to get away. But you see, Yorick getting pretty tanky himself, will have that sustained damage. Yorick very strong against melees. His Q in particular, if he gets tanky enough, I don't know, he could maybe take some of them down. But you saw once Vayne was gone, the fight started to shift in Ernst & Young's favor. Vayne being a little bit too reckless early on, being just extremely aggressive, trying to get some kills. It worked out in their favor, but we saw Wukong flashing over the wall after Vayne actually using his ultimate too early before he had gotten in range of Vayne, so actually just completely wasting his ultimate. And if they can take her down, that'll be huge. But you see Vayne picking up that GA like we had talked about. If she can survive through that burst damage, then that fight moves into their favor once again.
Yeah, I was really going to say it, that it's pretty much all up to Shift Key to kind of hold that team fight together for him. And if he gets out of position, he's really going to pretty much make them lose that fight. But that GA, I mean, that's going to be really big for him. If he does die, he comes back up with that GA. If he dies again, he has that Yorick ultimate if Yorick's still around. So Vayne's going to be sticking around for a really long time in these team fights, and it's going to be really funny to see Ernst Young try to get her out of the equation. Like, okay, focus Vayne, kill her. Oh wait, she's back up, kill her again. Oh wait, she's still up, kill her again, kind of thing.
Vayne is definitely a little bit out of position here, though. We do see Udyr coming in. He does have that Oracles. There's the stun, but it goes off into Shift Key as well. She will use the ultimate trying to get out of there. There's the ultimate from Wukong, and they are going to chase under the tower. Vayne is definitely going to go down, going to lose that GA, and then also going to die under this tower. In the meantime, we see Microsoft going after Baron. So here's the concern. They don't have a lot of sustained damage. There's no Q from Ernst & Young, though. They don't know. They don't have any wards there. Janna's coming up, so she's going to see that they don't have any wards, and they're all in that bottom lane. So a free Baron for Microsoft. Vayne did go down, but split pushing for her team kind of drew them off guard. They didn't recognize what was going on, so kind of a huge play for Microsoft, even though they lost Vayne.
Yeah, that's actually really big for Microsoft and a really smart play on their part to really take advantage of that situation. And in the meantime, we see Ernst Young actually picking up potentially 2 towers here. So they didn't come out, completely with nothing in this, but obviously a Baron kind of outweighs those 2 towers, especially when towers go down too, fast as it is at the moment.
Yeah, and we'll see. They really need to just be really aggressive. Actually, there's the teleport in from York, so that is going to stall out this push. And now, once again, they don't have that pushing capability. I was going to say if York wasn't there, they needed to just kind of dive on that turret and try and take it down quickly because they need to get towers. They don't have that great pushing capability, and if they allow it to stall out in lanes, that moves more and more into Microsoft's favor. Now they're just going to have to wait around for Baron to be down. Microsoft is just too strong at this point having that Baron. But we'll see. You know, if Ernst and Young can pick people off, they have a pretty strong team if they have a disorganized fight. So it'll be down to them to have the good initiation that they want. But again, Gragas and Janna, they can just stop the fight whenever they want. They say, hey, you know, you thought that you were going to fight here. Well, you were mistaken. I'm Gragas. I'm Janna. I'm going to take care of control here.
Hear me roar.
Yeah. So that's basically the concern for Ernst and Young right now.
You know, I have to say, if I was on Microsoft, I'd be really sad to see just what Ernst Young has. Those 2 frozen mallets, that's like my most hated item to go against, just because you could not get away from someone with that. And if that Olaf can at least not get messed around or not, you know, knocked away in any sort of fashion, you know, by popping his ultimate, he can still take down that Vayne no matter what. I mean, she does have that GA, but armor's not really going to mean too much against his true damage since he obviously is not building health.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern. I don't know, they're exceedingly tanky right now. We still have a lot of burst damage from Victor, and you see some of that damage going on to Vayne. Vayne's just going to push down this tower, but maybe getting a little bit out of position. But again, the whirlwinds from Janna will keep them alive, will allow them to be very safe there. But Vayne can't allow herself to get caught. If Vayne is caught, then that's, you know, the fight is over for Microsoft.
Right, and actually wanted to take a look. I was looking at items really quickly. Grog's actually went for a Rylai's, which is understandable, but he like you were saying, he's all about burst. He can't really do too much sustained damage. I'm surprised to see that he didn't actually go for that Void Staff, or even build into that Zhonya's for extra like crazy damage and the armor, and not to mention, you know, that free 3-second or 2-second you know, immunity.
I actually really like the Rylai's pick. Void Staff, there's really no need because we don't have a lot of MR. The only person with MR on this team is Udyr, really. We see a little bit on Olaf, you know, when he's got his ultimate as well, but he's really not going to have, it's really only Udyr and Olaf. And other than that, you know, Gragas is still going to be very effective at bursting people down, so he doesn't need that Void Staff. It's not a very efficient item. What Rylai's will give them is more slow to keep Vayne alive, and that's the big key. He's already going to have his attack speed slow on his Q to be able to shut down some of their, you know, physical damage, but having that movement speed slow as well is going to allow him to be a little bit better sustained damage in fights, allow him to keep Vayne alive better. It'll give him more health so that they can't burst Gragas down, which is also a concern for their team. So just all around, actually a pretty smart item choice in my mind. You're right, the Zhonya's would have been, you know, with the armor, would have been a pretty good call. But here's the concern with the Zhonya's. Because we've already talked about how much sticking potential their team has, because they have all those frozen mallets, having all this melee team, use Zhonya's as Gragas, and now the team is just right on top of you. Right when you come out of Zhonya's, you just go down immediately. So because he's not a sustained damage champion, having that Zhonya's doesn't really help him that much.
Yeah, very true. And you're definitely right about that slow from that Rylai's messed big split paired up with that Jonah passive is going to be extremely nice for them to get away and really protect that Vayne. And I'm hoping to see a Last Whisper come out of Vayne and not an IE, because that's kind of really what's needed when you kind of go that, at least in my experience, when you kind of go that Bloodthirster Panda Dancer build, you can't really get that IE, because at that point the other team has armor.
Right.
I don't know your take on it. I mean, feel free to chime in.
No,
there.
that's absolutely, that's 100% right. It's we are starting to see more and more armor, and we're going to start seeing a lot more armor. Right now, you know, Vayne could consider going Infinity Edge, but the concern is if you commit yourself to the Infinity Edge build, then you just don't have enough time to transition. So you do actually see she is getting the Last Whisper, which is a smart pickup. We don't see a lot of armor yet on the team, but it protects her against that eventuality. And that's the concern. Like you said, you go with the Bloodthirster, you go with that cheap build. It gives her great sustain in fights, but it prevents you from going Infinity Edge because it's really just committing too many resources into your items.
I think overall, though, it's a smart pick to go Bloodthirster just based on the enemy team. You're not really going to burst anyone down on that team. Right. You can't even get in range to do it. So, this is not good. We're seeing an engage here. And Microsoft getting caught off guard with the Victor ultimate and the Wukong. Everything's going down. Everyone getting knocked around everywhere. As we see Wukong actually going down here finally. And Vayne trying to get some damage here, but she's not really being too effective at this moment as Udyr actually, wow, getting blown up out of nowhere. Yeah, and Vayne with that Last Whisper is just destroying people. Oh my gosh, that was such a crazy early fight, and apparently being called out by Wukong here for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you're saying right there, that Bane, as long as you can position yourself correctly, is just gonna dominate the other team.
And you saw their whole team sitting in the bush there trying to get the jump on the Microsoft. They got the jump. That's the best they can hope for, but they're all grouped up in that AoE, and that short-range AoE is perfect for Gragas. We saw all of his burst damage, no one touching Vayne. She took no damage, for the most part. And what damage she did take, she could just regen from her Bloodthirster, so that is going to be game. Vayne just too strong at this point for their team. The Bruiser team not able to get the footing that they need. So Microsoft taking game number 1 from Ernst & Young. We'll see how they, kind of resolve this issue coming into game number 2.
One thing I do want to say, though, is that if you saw how low that Microsoft actually was, they had Gragas really low, they had
Yeah.
Lee Sin really low, they had York really low. But you take a look at what we were saying earlier and how the longer the game goes on, the harder that Ernst Young's actually going to fall off. So maybe if this fight happened 10 minutes earlier, this grouping and team fighting, we might have seen Ernst Young actually win that game. But they just fall off too hard. They don't have that extra damage they need from an AD carry to like win those fights.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And we never saw that great Wukong Victor combo. And that was what they needed to do. They needed to just burst down Vayne. Vayne got the GA because she knew they were trying to burst her down. Victor's silence can really, shut down a lot of what Vayne is trying to do. It prevents a lot of her survivability. She needs to be able to spam her abilities in order to get out. But we never saw that combo happening. And so it got to the point in the game where she was just too strong. As a team, they were just too strong. And then you combo Vayne with the Yorick ultimate of Vayne, and you just have so much damage potential. It's really unruly as the game progresses. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'd like to see Victor go mid, and whether or not they think that's still a good champ, if they like Victor enough, if they're confident with Victor. But we never really saw him get off the board. He farmed very well, but didn't really have the potential that you want from a Victor. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Wukong definitely worked out pretty well for them, but never quite able to get their whole team to mesh together, never able to take enough of an advantage, which is what you need with a Bruiser team. You have high base, you don't scale well into the game. You need to just take advantage early and be unrelenting.
I feel like that game really turned around at that Dragon. Actually, did you get your? Oh, you did not get an invite. Let me make sure you get that. But I think that game really turned around at that Dragon fight where we saw Microsoft ace Ernst Young, and that was just all based on Wukong not having his ultimate up. I can't remember your name because it's so long. Oh crap! I don't even know. I don't even remember to spell it. Often. Yeah. Okay. I memorized your name finally. It took me like 2 months, but I finally did it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how you feel,
It's just
but
too manly of a name.
it is. It's too godly. It's like you can't look at it because if you do, you'll go blind kind of thing because it's so awesome.
I designed it that way actually.
No.
That's what my name, for those of you who don't know, is the name of the Red Baron, that great World War I German fighter ace. So, I always enjoyed Snoopy versus the Red Baron. It's a Royal Guardsman song when I was a little boy, when I was a young lad. But I don't know. Red Baron is definitely something that I've always enjoyed the stories of growing up.
Actually, sorry, we're going to need to give you the password. So in the meantime, I'm going to take off the screen so no one sees it. Right there, and ask for it.
Who created anyway?
It is Plog. And it's the same password as you didn't know the password last game. It's this.
Oh, okay, so the password is just
that.
Yeah, I just want... Oh, well, that's interesting. Oh, right. I forgot capitals matter.
Okay,
boom!
There we go. Now I can put it back up on the screen for people to see.
Yeah, I was going to just say it, since it doesn't really matter. It's a normal game, so there's only 2 spectator slots.
Still, yeah, that's true. Anyways, yeah, so that team fight at Dragon, I felt really kind of set that tone for the game. If they just would have waited, or not engaged, and waited for Wukong's ultimate up, they really would have held Microsoft back enough that they could have potentially won it. They could have used that momentum, and that fight gave, in turn, Microsoft momentum to pretty much take that game. It's really unfortunate because that's how League of Legends works. When you get 2 teams who are pretty equally skilled, one mistake really kind of makes you win or lose a game.
And the concern is they ran a team where you can't have any mistakes. They ran a full bruiser team. They needed to take an early game advantage, and we saw them get a couple of kills early, but you need to snowball from those kills. And, losing a fight like that just allows Vayne to get in the game. You saw great control from Vayne the whole time. Just stutter step, micro all over the place, able to get out of position, constantly move herself away from that melee line, just get effective damage in. So just awesome play all around by Shiftkey and great farm from Shiftkey. Victor farmed very well as well, but, clearly Vayne with farm is a little bit more devastating than Victor is. So
Yeah,
that is
especially
going
when
to
you
be a
put them on the
concern for
same
them.
level of, well, in the same levels. At level 10, Victor versus level 10, Vayne with equal CS is not going to, turn out too well for that Victor.
And I kind of would have liked to see a more aggressive jungler from